Sorry? Oh, sure. Sounds all right? Okay, great. Thank you so much, David. Welcome, everybody. Chag Sameach. If you're comfortable, we're going to be starting with Mincha, with our service. So welcome, everyone. And please help yourselves to a Siddur. Start in about a minute. We'll be starting on page 1, actually, so you can find your way to page 1. Was that? Seriously. It feels very elemental. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome, and almost Chag Sameach. Shavuot. We wait. Oh, thank you. Irving, you're an observant Jew. Thank you for that. All right. So, folks, welcome everybody. We're going to begin on page 1 with Ashrei. So please join us. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha. Hodi Hallelujah Sen Ashrei Ha'am Shekachalo Ashrei Ha'am She'Adonai Elohai. Adar Kavodecha B'divrei Nitotecha Asicha Ve'zuz Nerotecha Yomeru. Anun berachum Adonai el chapai mugdal chesed tov Adonai lakol berachamav al kol asav. Einei cholelecha yisaberu ve'ata noten lahem et ochlam be'itom. Poteach et yadecha u'matzpiah lecho chai ratzon tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav. Tehillat Adonai Yadaber Pi, V'yavarech Kol Basar, Shem Kodsho Le'olam Vahed, V'anachnu Nevarech Yah, Me'ata V'yad Olam. Hallelujah. Everybody, please rise. We turn to page 2. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Ve'amad yivrak yirutei v'yamlich machotei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olam maya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yichamam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shmei d'kudusha b'richu le'elam mikol b'chata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma ve'imru Amen. I'm going to begin on page 3b. We'll do Kedusha together on page 4, and then continue the Amidah privately. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chastei Avot, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ביהבה, מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים לחסד, וחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב ביד נביאך, וכרזה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, דברי קודשך כתוב לאמור. ימלוך אדוני לעולם מלך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Ose shalom bimroma. Uyase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru. Imru amen. Ya'ase shalom. Ya'ase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'ase shalom. Ya'ase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We turn to page 10. Yitkadal v'yitkadash merabah. Ve'amad divrah kirutei v'yamlich machotei. V'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayechon beit Yisrael. Ba'agada v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba Mavarach ve'alam v'lo me'omayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitshemam v'yiznaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudsha b'richu. Ve'yelah mikol b'chata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechamata dameran ve'amah v'yimru amen. Titkabal telo tehon uval tehon dechol Yisrael. Kodam avuhon devishmaya v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imroma hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latei kedula le'otzer b'reshit shelo wasanu kegoyeh aratzot v'lo samanu kemishpechot adamah. Shelo sam pelekenu pahen, ve'koraneinu kechol amona, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim, ve'yosei haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim. Al kein kabel echad Adonai Eloheinu lirot mehera b'tiferetu secha. V'loch aleha. Takatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam ba'ed. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai v'melech al kol ha'aretz. Bayom hahu, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shema, u'shema, u'shema echad. Mourner's Kaddish on page 12. Yitzkadal ve'yitzkadash shemei Rabbav, ve'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich machutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei techol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam u'lo me'omayah. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitzpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh, Ve'yitadar, ve'yitaleh, ve'yithalal, shemei dekudsha, ve'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran da'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imroma, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Everybody be seated just for a moment. So just to give a little bit of an introduction to the evening. So Shavuot is approaching, Zaman Matan Toratenu, the season of the giving of our Torah. And we're going to be eating first. So we decided that we would eat first and study once our stomachs have been filled. I just want to acknowledge the gratitude year after year of Bert and Jackie Eshagpour, who have underwritten this evening's program. So we thank them for their generosity and graciousness once again. And we're going to have dinner. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Israel at 75. We're also going to be singing. So we're going to be looking at what different thinkers have to say about Israel. What are the challenges? What are the hopes? and generate hopefully a robust conversation. And we're also going to be doing singing of Israeli songs that tell a lot about the culture and the history, and it's also an opportunity to sing together. So welcome everybody, and please, at your convenience, head, if you wish, towards the buffet, which is in the back. B'tei Avon, enjoy, and Chag Sameach. Welcome.
המלחמה האחרונה. אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה. I'll turn it down. Am I too loud? Oh. You didn't? תהיה המלחמה האחרונה. Did you make it louder? No, I think it's boring. Yeah. אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה המלחמה האחרונה. אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה המלחמה האחרונה.
You're up. We'll do your karamazon. Folks, we are going to do a few things. We'll do Birkat Hamazon together, so make sure that we have a choveret for that. Sure. So our Chazan is going to lead us. Please join together. We have a few booklets on each table, starting. We'll do Birkat Hamazon. Starting on page 42.
We are full of gratitude with the delicious food.
With Chavarai Nevaret.
Sure, okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Chavera
Starting on 44, actually.
Nevaret.
Shem Adonai Baruch Me'ata Ve'ad Olam.
Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach Me'ata Ve'ad Olam. B'shut Chaverai. Nevarech Eloheinu Shachanu Mishelo.
Eloheinu Shachanu Mishalov Tuvo Chayinu.
Baruch Eloheinu Shachanu Mishelo. Tuvo Chayinu. Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. Baruch Atah Adonai. Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Hazan et ha'olam kulo b'tuvo b'chem b'chesed u'rachamim. Hu noten lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasto. U'b'tuvo hagadol תמיד לא חסר לנו ויחסר לנו חזון לעולם ועד בעבור שמו הגדול. כי הוא הזמן פרנס לכל ומיטיב לכל ומכין מזון לכל בריאותיו אשר ברא. ברוך אתה אדוני Hazanet hakol.
46. We give thanks for Eretz Israel.
Adonai Eloheinu al shemchat avotenu, Eretz chemdat v'ruchava, ve'al shotzitanu, Adonai Eloheinu me'eretz Mitzrayim, ותיתנו מבית עבדים, על בריתך שחתמת בבשרנו, ועל תורתך שלימדתנו, ועל חוקיך שהודתנו, ועל חיים חן וחסד שכוננתנו, ועל אכילת מזון, שאתה זון ומפרנס אותנו תמיד, בכל יום ובכל עת ובכל שעה.
49.
ועל הכל, אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך, ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך, בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. כך כתוב, ואכלת ושבעת וברכת את אדוני אלוהיך, על הארץ הטובה שנתן לך, ברוך אתה אדוני, על הארץ ועל המזון. רחם אדוני אלוהינו על ישראל עמך, על ירושלים עירך, על ציון משכן כבודך, ועל מלכות בית דוד משיחך, על הבית הגדול והקדוש נקרא שמך עליו. אלוהינו אבינו ראינו זוננו, פרנסנו וכלכלנו, והרוויחנו, והרווח לנו אדוני אלוהינו, מהרה מכל צרותינו, ונא תצריכנו אדוני אלוהינו, לא לידי מתנת בשר ודם, ולא לידי הלוותם, כי לידך המלאה הפתוחה, הקדושה והרחבה, שלא ניבוש נפלים חלים לעולם ועד.
And now, page 54, Uvnei Yerushalayim.
ובני ירושלים הקודש במהרה ימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני בונה ורחמה ירושלים, אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, האל אבינו מלכנו אדירנו בורנו, גואלנו יוצרנו קדושנו קדוש יעקב. רואינו רואי ישראל, המלך הטוב ומיטיב לכל, שבכל יום ויום הוא היטיב ומיטיב הוא ייטיב לנו. הוא גמלנו, הוא גומלנו, הוא יגמלנו לעד, יחנו חסר רחמים ורווח הצלה והצלחה, ברכה וישועה נחמה פרנסך חלה, ברחמים וחיים ושלום בכל טוב, ומכל טוב לעולם יחסרנו. הרחמן ימנוח עלינו לעולם ועד, הרחמן יתברך בשמיים ובארץ.
56, we join together.
הרחמן ישתבח לדורים, ויתפאר בנו לנצח נצחים, ויתהדר בנו לעולם ועולמים. הרחמן יפרנסנו בכבוד, הרחמן ישבור עלינו מעל צווארנו, והוא יוליכנו ויעצנו. הרחמן ישלח ברכה מרובה בבית הזה, ועל שולחן זה שכבנו עליו. הרחמן ישלח לנו את אליהו הנביא, הרחמן הוא ישלח לנו את אליהו מזכולתו, ויבשר לנו בשורות טובות, ישועות ונחמות.
And we pray for our well-being and the well-being of all in our community. 58.
הרחמן יברך את כל המסובים כאן, אותנו וכל השלנו, כמו שהתברכו אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, בכל מכל כל, כן יברך אותנו כולנו יחד, בברכה שלמה ונאמר אמן. במרום ילמדו עליהם ועלינו, זכות שתהא למשמרת שלום, ונישא ורחמת אדוני, וצחם אלוהי אישנו, ונמצא חן ושכל טוב בעיני אלוהים ואדם. הרחמן, ויברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הרחמן יברך את הארץ הזאת, ויגן עליה.
The state of Israel and the United States of America.
הרחמן יברך את אחינו בני ישראל, הנתונים בצרה, ויוציאם מאפלה לאורה. הרחמן הוא יזכנו לימות המשיח, ולחיי העולם הבא. מגדיל ישועות יעקב, ועושה חסד המשיכו, לדוד וזרעו עד עולם. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל ישראל ויגבר. אמן. יראו את אדוני קדושיו, כי יש מחסור יראיו. כפירים רשו ורעבו, ודורשי אדוני לא יחסרו חוטו. הודו לאדוני כי זו, כי לעולם חסו. פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכוח הרצון. ברוך הגבר אשר יפתח באדוני, והיה אדוני מבטחו. זקנתי ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב, וזר מבקש לכם, וזר מבקש לכם, אדוני עושה עמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו ושלום.
Okay, folks, I would just love to ask people for your attention, please. So first of all, welcome everybody. Folks, thank you. We're going to be having a conversation. We want everybody to be able to hear and to be able to participate. So for the next few minutes, thanks everybody. For the next few minutes, we're going to have a conversation about Israel's present and Israel's future. And obviously, we'll have different opinions and it's very complicated. But our thinking was, here we are 75 years after Israel was established as a modern country. There are so many challenges, there's so much opportunity. And we thought, let's look forward to the next 25 years. What's it going to look like? So some of the challenges are the diversity that exists within Israeli society. You have Ashkenazi and Sephardi, and you have right-wing and centrist and left-wing, and you have minorities that include Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, Christians. You also have differences of opinion about what Israel should actually be as a democracy. So we're going to take a look at a few different ideas that were put together. If you have Moments magazine or you look online, you can actually see all of the people whose opinions were requested for their sense of what's going on with Israel today, what gives you hope, what makes you anxious. And then we're going to do Mariv Arvit. We're going to bring in the holiday officially. We'll have some dessert. And then we're going to enjoy some singing of some classic Israeli songs. And what we'd like to do is a little bit to use the songs as kind of a window into Israeli culture and into some of the major ideas that Israelis and everybody who loves Israel wrestle with. But also we want to have fun singing together. So before we get started, I want you to just take a moment everybody just take a quiet moment and think. If you think about Israel today, what is it about Israel that makes you anxious? And what is it that gives you hope? So we're going to talk about anxiety and then about tikva, because we always end with tikva. So just take a moment, think about it. What makes you anxious about Israel and what gives you hope?
And there's plenty of seats in the front. So I
Okay.
know we're not going to call on people in the front of the class. We're not going to,
Right.
So,
There's always seats in the front we know that. So what makes you anxious and what gives you hope about Israel?
raise your hand if you'd like to
Okay,
share.
so let's start with the anxiety. So just anything that you want to share that makes you anxious right now. Sure, loud. Okay, so Iran, the threat of Iran makes you anxious. Okay. What else makes you anxious? David? Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay.
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 So
we
a
gotcha.
lot. Okay, good. All right, so anything that was not said that makes you anxious, please. Right. Okay, so the safety of your loved ones in Israel, and of course, everybody's safety in Israel, concern about the current political leadership in Israel and where it's headed. Good. Anything else? We're still on anxiety. High anxiety. Go ahead. Great. So the polarization between the citizens of Israel is cause for anxiety. All right. Anything else? Okay. So in world opinion, Israel is being treated unfairly.
Edie.
Beautiful. More, Edie. Okay. So reforms to the judicial system are a cause of anxiety. The proposed reforms. All right. Anything that you would like to share that perhaps has not been said? Sure. So the way, right, good. How Israel is being treated in the United Nations, the unfairness. Yes. Okay. Makes you anxious. All right. Sure. Okay. So lack of American leadership to step up on behalf of Israel. All right. So folks, we're going to hold off. Yeah, well, that's the polarization. Yes, yes, yes. No, that's okay. No, but it's the same idea. So Israel is divided right and left. So there's definitely, if you look at some of the divisions in Israel, you'll see a lot of parallels between that and what's going on here in the United States. So we're going to see that in some of what we're reading. We're going to hold off on hope. We're going to come back to hope at the end because you got to give them hope. But I want to take us through, and Rabbi Schweber will take us through some as well. You're going to hear some things that you may disagree with completely, or that you may agree with completely, or that you might not be sure of. So I'm asking you just to hear it and to be prepared to respond. This is a conversation. And then we'll see if this gives us any greater insight. All right. So as I mentioned, we have concern about the diversity that exists in Israel, about external threats, about internal threats. So a whole bunch of leaders were asked to talk about what is their sense of Israel now, 75, okay? So the first comment that you have here is Fania Oz Salzberger. So the name Oz may be familiar to you. She is the daughter of Amos Oz. Amos Oz would describe himself as a left-leaning author, but Amos Oz, interestingly, when he was interviewed, when Gazans were attacking Israelis building tunnels, he did an interview in Germany. And before the interview began, he said to the journalist, I want you to imagine that you are sitting on a kibbutz in South Israel. You're there with your children. And all of a sudden, the ground starts to rumble. And you see that soldiers are emerging from tunnels and they have weapons and they are aiming it at your children. Can you imagine that? Because that's the threat that we face. And the journalist said, yes, I can imagine. And Amos Oz said, now you can begin the interview. So Amos Oz, self-described left-leaning peacenik, had a very strong sense of the security threats that Israel faced. This is his daughter, who taught at Haifa University. And I'm just going to read portions here. So she is saying that the conquest of the Palestinians is a big problem for Israelis, and that there is a threat that those who are secular, the secular liberal Jews, are feeling like they are they no longer have the same claim on Israel. So then she writes, so much for prophecies of doom. Here is a cautious prophecy of redemption. At 75 years, Israel is not a new country. Its democracy dates back to 1897. It was a democratic Congress in the following year when women entered as full delegates, but only in 2023 did Israeli civil society discover its dormant power. So she's saying now that the protests that are taking place are a sign of Israel's robust democracy. And the last thing that she says, I am awed by the number of my countrywomen and countrymen who are out on the streets fighting this good fight. It is a dangerous movement, civil society pitched against state, honest ideology straining against counter-ideology, coupled with power-mongering and individual self-interest. I must conclude, fingers trembling on the keyboard, 2023 may become a very significant year in Jewish history. May the Third Temple remain standing, but only as a democracy. So she is speaking, I think, on behalf of those who see themselves as liberal, who see themselves as secular, and she is very concerned with what is going on right now in the state of Israel. He's progressive, yeah. That's her voice. Interestingly, by the way, she also mentions, I didn't quote this part, she sees a rift between Ashkenazim and Sephardim in Israel, which is also interesting, and we're going to see that reflected in Meir Buzaglo, who we'll turn to in a moment, okay? So just sit with that for a moment. That's one voice, and there are others, of course, who would express similar sentiments. So now turn the page. So we have Rabbi Yitz Greenberg. So Rabbi Yitz Greenberg would describe himself as a modern Orthodox rabbi. He also believed that Jews should talk to each other, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, secular. We're all one people. We have to learn how to talk to each other. And what he said here,
he also, by the way, believes that post-Holocaust, we are in a new covenant. There was such an upheaval in the Holocaust that it can't just be, business as usual pre-Holocaust to post-Holocaust.
Right. So one of the things that he's going to argue is that God wants us to step up and to defend ourselves, that God doesn't want us to wait for redemption, that part of this new covenant is that we need to defend ourselves and we need to participate in our redemption. So I just want to read you a little bit portion. So we're living through right now, a renewal of the covenant under new rules. God is present as our partner and companion, but one who has called us to take responsibility. This is what the Haredim are wrong about. They say that they can learn Torah and be exempt from the army because God will protect us. By the way, I think it's important. I mentioned that Amos Oz, the self-described left-winger, was very concerned with and aware of Israeli security. I think it's important because people simplify and they say, oh, somebody like that doesn't care about Israeli security. Not always true. Haredim do sometimes serve in the army. That is one of the interesting quiet revolutions that is taking place, that young Haredim, some of them, their parents don't want them to. They are actually serving in the Israeli army, and there are entire troops that consist of Haredi military soldiers. So that's just interesting. But he's saying, generally speaking, Haredim are saying they can learn Torah, and that's how they support Eretz Yisrael. And so he said, in Europe, all the prayers and learning of Torah did not stop the Holocaust. The Jewish people overwhelmingly get that. And in Israel's Declaration of Independence, the founders, although called secularists, said openly that their top priority would be to work in the spirit of the prophets, bringing back scattered Jews from around the world, fulfilling the traditional promise of justice for everyone. And so that was their taking responsibility for the covenant. And I just want to share this with you because it's so profound. 80 years ago, and for 2,000 years before that, if you were a Jew, you were in more danger than other people. Jewish blood was cheap. Israel in 75 years has not only guaranteed a haven to every Jew in the world, it has made Jewish lives more likely to be saved, as you saw what happened in the Ukraine. So, I mean, we saw that Jewish people in Ukraine discovered that because of the existence of Israel, that they actually were less vulnerable than other people. And so imagine, I mean, to be a Jew is always to be more vulnerable. With the existence of the state of Israel, we have situations where the Jewish people actually are less vulnerable and have more strength than other people. If you were a Jew, there were people out there who made special efforts for you. That's an amazing accomplishment. Israel and world Jewry have restored the value of Jewish life. So, thoughts about the first two comments before we move on. I mean, number one, the fear of Israel as a democracy and what is the future. And number two, how important that every Jew is stronger by virtue of the existence of the state of Israel, and that we need to be part of that. So if anybody has anything that you want to add or refute or question. Go ahead. Yes. Okay. So I don't know exactly what she would say about that, but what is she getting at when she talks about, hang on one second, sent its rot down to the roots?
It's to repeat the question, especially for the people online, but.
Okay, no, so the question was, what is she actually getting at? I mean, that, that they have to be doing this, but it stinks, or they shouldn't be doing it, or I mean, like, what's the actual point that she's trying to make? So I believe that the point that she's trying to make is that Israel's relationship with the Palestinians and it is problematic for Israel and is destroying Israel. I think that's her point. That's the rot that she's referring to. By the way, again, in the spirit of adding more information, Yeshaya Leibovich, who was a professor of philosophy, so after the 6-Day War, which we're going to get to, was Israel thought that was the end. I mean, there were mass graves that were being created as the Arab countries were amassing their forces on all of Israel's borders. And of course, Israel defeated her enemies in the 6-Day War. And Yeshaya Leibovich said that Israel's relationship with the Palestinians in whatever you want to call it, West Bank, Judah and Samaria, that would ultimately lead to tremendous problems for Israel. And people kind of ignored him at the time. And indeed, it has been problematic. Whatever one might think the solution should be, I think there's no denying that the situation is problematic. So that's what she's referring to. Rabbi Schweber, if you take us through the next.
Are you gonna do Yossi Klein Halevi, or you want me to?
What's that?
Are you gonna do Yossi Klein Halevi?
You want to take that?
I didn't prepare that. But.
Okay, so Yossi Klein Halevi, I'll just take.
Sorry.
No problem. I'll take a moment to look at this. So Yossi Klein Halevi, somebody who I believe often has thoughtful things to say about the current situation in Israel. He made Aliyah in around the time of the Lebanon War. He said when he made Aliyah, like after the 6-Day War, lots of people were making Aliyah. It was a very, very upbeat time in Israel's history. And the 80s were not such an upbeat time. So when he got there, nobody said, wow, it's great to see you. It was kind of a difficult time in Israel's history. He's a journalist. He did research into the Tzanchanim, the paratroopers that entered into Yerushalayim, and the famous pictures of the paratroopers, soldiers that are at the Kotel. So he actually interviewed them across time. An amazing, diverse group of people, the Tzanchanim, right wing and left wing, and Ashkenazi and Mizrahi, and really, really interesting. And what he's saying here basically is that Israel prevents the rest of the world from becoming exiled? Now, interesting question for all of us, okay? If we believe that Israel is the center of Jewish history, if we believe that Israel is the stage of Jewish history, and I'm not saying this, God forbid, to offend us, but just to raise the question, then what are we doing outside of Israel? If we don't believe that Israel is the center, that's one thing. But if we actually believe that Israel is really the sort of the spotlight of Jewish history, it's where the action is. It's, you know, can we create this society or not? Then why do people who have the choice choose to live outside of Israel? So I'm tossing that question gently into the air, and we'll read just a passage here. So, Yossi Klein Halevi,
From
okay.
Chicago, I think.
No, Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Oh,
sorry.
my goodness. So he was part of the, I'm sorry, the JDL, thank you, the Jewish Defense League.
He was
He
a
was part of it.
communist.
Yeah. So he described himself later as an extremist. I mean, he was involved in what we might call some vigilante activity, sort of, you know, going after physically people who were opposing the Jewish people. And in any case, he's in a different place right now ideologically. But what he says is, I come from the center, and we are militant centrists, which means we're a little bit left-wing and a little bit right-wing, but now we have to fight for the center. So I just want to throw that out there, that he says, like, you know, sometimes in response to the polarization, like there are things that the left says, Yossi Klein Halevi would say, that bother him, and things that the right says that bother him. And one thing that he said about the Palestinian situation, which I'll share and then turn it over, he said there are two nightmare scenarios that he can envision. One, where Israel gives up the West Bank and it is given to Palestinian autonomy. And the other, where Israel doesn't give up the West Bank. In other words, either way, he's saying it's a problem. I mean, there's no way that you can look at this and say it's simple, because he sees the problems that exist on both sides. And he is fighting, I guess he would say, for a sane, moderate approach that recognizes Israel's security, but also wants Israel to remain a democracy. And sometimes he feels like those people who are in the middle are not loud enough and not strong enough. So people throughout the world think that Israel is just filled with extremists. Rabbi Schwaber.
Thank you so much. So for the next two of them, I'm going to bring in some of my own reading and opinions. And what's interesting, I mean, obviously this is just a snapshot of a snapshot, as Rabbi Stecker said. So it's easy, and probably the only thing we can do is to take some of it out of context and to use it to me as a springboard, or as something to create new thinking, or to have newer ideas that piggyback upon that. So sorry for that long piece. Someone mentioned before that the New York Times is a challenge to Israel. However, there is a brand new book out literally 1 week by Isabel Kirshner, who was the longtime correspondent to the New York Times in Israel. I looked her up. I thought she was American. Again, I listen to books on recording, and so it's not the author. So I don't know. It's the author's voice, but I never know what the author sounds like. She's British. She was born in Manchester, and she is Jewish. And she talks in part of the book a little bit. Actually, she went to Ulpan, to a kibbutz in the 1980s. So she has lived in Israel every time that she's been, when working for the New York Times. So she's part of the history, but also as a journalist, she has to take herself out of it and just be an investigator presenting things. So the name of the book is The Land of Hope and Fear. I'm only not even, I'd say, a quarter of the way through the book. And just like Mayor Buzaglo does, is there's a lot of polarization in Israel. We've already heard of some of those, and I mean, Yossi Klein Halevi and Daniel Hartman and the Hartman Institute really talk about tribes. Other people do as well. The tribes of Israel. Just like the ancient, there were 12 tribes in Israel that made up B'nai Yisrael. There are groups in Israel, interest groups, ethnic groups that can at times, yes, be united as Israelis and as Jews, and can also be very much polarized. And so how do we handle that? Is there any glue? That's my question. I think their question as well. Is there any glue that we can add to the mix to keep us together? When there were wars, it was a little bit easier. Someone mentioned that to me already earlier. When there were wars, the security kept us close. Now, I'm not going to say that Israel doesn't have threats, but we can start thinking about our eternal differences, and it's already come to the forefront. And so now we have to find a new glue. And so Bazalgo actually talks about sort of the Ashkenazi Mizrahi rift, and Kirshner does as well. She begins with that, and it talks also about sort of the socialist leftist, different mentality of the Middle Easterners. There, he talks here actually that there was a lot of I'll use the term systemic racism. That's what it was. The agenda of the Ashkenazi leadership in the 1950s, and it's come out just as we've in America have dealt with how we dealt with racial justice or racial injustice. The same thing. They would take these Mizrahi immigrants, shove them into these development towns. Anyone wanted to show any promise of intellectual thinking? No, you need to be a car mechanic. Well, we'll teach you to be a car mechanic because Israel needs car mechanics. And I mean, you can sort of see where this is going. And so he has that mentioned a little bit. And so he wants to bring up the Mizrahi DNA. And he does it first, and he doesn't develop it. I mean, I didn't read the whole thing here, but of all of him, but he doesn't develop it. He says, the Mizrahim, they know how to handle the neighborhood of the Middle East. Stop Ashkenazim. Don't tell us how to handle the neighborhood of the Middle East. We can do it. We know how to talk to our Arab neighbors. Let us do some of the talking. They live with them. True.
That's exactly. Yeah. Well, that's exactly what he says. Right.
Correct.
So this is exactly his point. That don't Ashkenazim, don't tell us how to handle this neighborhood. Exactly.
And I mean, we see that happening with the Abraham Accords. I don't know enough about him, what's the answer to the Palestinian cause, because the reality is, as Yossi Klein Halevi said, that there are 2.6, actually 2.7 now, it keeps growing, 2.7 million Palestinian Arabs living in the West Bank. How are they going to live? What's going to happen to them? It's a question. And so if Mizrahi knowing the neighborhood can help, great. But that's actually not what I focused on. I didn't focus on that. I focused on his idea of let's bring back Sephardi intellectualism.
Yeah.
Let's elevate that. Let's elevate that. We see that with, obviously, go back to the past. You have Maimonides. I've taught a bunch of classes this year, like my Tuesday class when my students are here. And we've talked about actually sort of the intellectual history of things that moved actually in Baghdad. Remember, that's where the Talmud was born. And so intellectual history moved from Baghdad to Israel, down to Cairo, across to Spain, up into Europe, back down to Italy. I mean, and just all over at least the known Jewish world. And so to say that the 19th century nationalism that the Ashkenazim or European Jews brought as the end of be all, that was a mistake. He's saying, okay, they needed to build Israel. I don't know if that's the case. I wasn't alive, so it happened. But we need to find a way to elevate, and this is where the hope comes in for me. The hope comes in building a culture of Israeli intellectualism that combines and celebrates the Jewish and just humanistic ideas of Jews and people that come from all over the world, and to not just end with whatever Western philosophy that we're talking about. And that gets us to the last person, Avia Kirshner, who is an associate professor of creative writing at Columbia College, Chicago. This is the Columbia College there as well. and I don't know her biography, but she also brings up this idea. And actually, it's an old new idea to play on Theodore Herzl. Okay, is Ivrit. We learned, obviously, go to Rehov ben Yehuda. Who was Eliezer ben Yehuda? He was the freak. Okay, I'm going to say a freak who said, "Let's start talking Hebrew," and it caught on from a few people. David Ben Gurion, before he moved to Israel, he would only talk Hebrew where he lived in Germany. So, but it allowed, obviously, a rejuvenation of the Hebrew language, that you now actually have more Hebrew speakers than people who speak Danish from Denmark. And she brings up the fact, and I've experienced this. If you go outside of America and you want to meet a Jew, the best way to communicate with him or her is in Hebrew. And they know Hebrew really well. You can go to South America. If you go to Argentina right now and you go into the Jewish community and you start speaking Hebrew, okay, and actually that happened actually at the Rabbinical Assembly Convention. I was sitting at a table one night with the Argentinian rabbis. They were all speaking Spanish. I sat down, I said, "Can I join you?" And we all broke into Hebrew, okay? So that is a way for us to be united. And so living in Chicago at the moment, it's a challenge to us in America that we have dropped the ball on Hebrew education. I don't know what the answer is. I am an alumni of Camp Ramah in the Berkshires. The Camp Ramah that you went to, David, probably spoke much more Hebrew, okay, all throughout the day. The Hebrew that I got was, we called it Ramah Hebrew, and that has even fallen down. But just because the kids and really more the staff just don't have the capability. So we have to find a way in this education milieu to bring back Hebrew here, but also just recognize that is a glue. If we recognize our culture, we had Yala Lachmish here in November, right in this very room. And she just was inspiring to me because she talked about a minhag, a Judaism, an Eretz Israeli Judaism. In Israeli Judaism, I'll use another word, Hebrew word, tarbut, culture, Israeli culture. Israeli culture, going back to the previous one, the Moroccan music, that's all been popularized, and Kirshner brings it up in her book, and how there was a grassroots to bring and make and really enrich the culture. That I would be hopefully would be the glue that brings us together. Hebrew, because we have to add the Haredim. They're going to be part of the community. They might not listen to Moroccan music, but if they speak Hebrew and are in the marketplace itself, or at least in the public sphere, we can use that as some glue to be together. So that's where I find some of the hope.
Okay, so folks, so we're going to take a couple more minutes. I asked before about anxiety and about hope, and we have, given you just a flavor of what different thinkers are saying about Israel, the challenges, and where they see hope. So does anybody want to share what gives you hope when you think about Israel today? Okay, so Tzionut, Zionism gives you hope. How? Say more. How so? Right. Sure. I will. Right. Yeah. To trust it. Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Right. So the okay. So the comment that's being made is that Zionism gives hope that we have to be supportive here of Israel, of Israel's democracy, and that's the source of hope. Yes.
Stand up, please, so we can hear you.
What gives you hope? What gives you hope about Israel today? A couple more. I thought somebody in the back wanted to say something.
Okay, Florida.
Okay. Arthur.
Arthur, and then
Arthur, beautiful. Nice. Loud.
So Arthur's asking, and I can, how many people graduate our religious school here and speak Hebrew? The answer is 0. Okay, I mean, yes. Yes, the answer is, are they Dovrei Ivrit? No. We can't teach that to them. We have
Yeah.
2 days a week now. We cannot teach
Right.
to be Dovrei Ivrit. Okay.
Okay.
Let your father-in-law finish.
Yeah.
So
I
so
think
Arthur's saying, I just want to repeat
Yeah,
it, you can
sure.
respond.
Yeah.
Is I want to phrase it a little bit different. Perhaps what should be our focus? We're living here in Great Neck. Should we be thinking about our brothers and sisters in Israel, and how much effort should we be putting on just the Jewish education, and I would say the Jewish survival of our children living here in Great Neck?
Right. So agreed. I think Hebrew education is important. There are some practical questions in terms of the amount of time that people are committing to their children's education. Language learning doesn't happen easily, as we know. Bribery is a good. Yeah. Right. Right. Oh,
Okay,
Arthur,
we're gonna-
come to the microphone, Arthur. Come on.
But then
And then we're gonna Arthur, yeah, and then we're gonna have a few other people share, and then we're going to do Mari. then we're gonna
we'll
walk
give you
around.
the floor for 30 seconds, and we'll have
Okay,
a
go
conversation.
ahead, Arthur, because then because other people would like it. Go ahead.
Talking about Jewish education, I've been involved with Queens College where we have they call it Jewish Advisory Group. And they don't have it's a program of Jewish education. In the last number of years, things have changed dramatically of the people that are going to Queens College. There never used to be any problem with things like that. People have been on our board, and some of the people sitting here have been on our board of Jewish education, right, Marty? Who have been there and left. Part of the major problem today, there are different young people going to the college level. They are coming from different backgrounds, and Jewish education is not that important. We happen to put together $750,000 that are in a foundation now for various efforts going on in education, none of which has been used either for daytime or nighttime. Right?
Right.
Good. Secondly, I look at the people in our room here tonight, and I probably break the average age a little bit, but I don't see people between the ages of 30 and 40 years old. I'll go below that, including my grandchildren. They don't have an interest in Jewishness in terms of Israel. And I speak to their friends, and I'm sure we all have a similar situation. They think Israel was created because of the Holocaust, and they have Jewish holidays. Everybody in Israel learns about Jewish holidays, but not about Yiddishkeit and Judaism. I don't know what to do about that, but I think we should be aware of these type of things, and we'll leave the rabbis to figure out how to solve it.
All right. Okay, Arthur, thank you. Thank you for the effort and thank you for the challenge. Let's take a few more thoughts from that back table over there about what gives you hope. Go ahead. So Rebecca and then Edie. Okay, so Barda, go ahead. You start. We'll conclude with this table, and then I promise you, we're not going anywhere. We're going to have Mariv and dessert and more opportunity to talk and to sing. So if you don't express your thought now, there will be ample opportunity later for us to discuss. Yeah. Right. Sure. Right. Yeah. Great. Okay. Perfect. Absolutely. So Vard is saying the technological advances, and also Israel really has gotten a good name for herself when there have been disasters in Nepal, in Haiti, Israelis are among the first on the ground providing support, technology, healthcare, et cetera. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Look, there are all sorts of opportunities to reach all ages. I do appreciate that, but the challenge is a very important one. There are a few more comments at that table, and then I think it's good that there's a lot that people want to share. We're going to move forward in a moment. So go ahead, Edie. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to repeat it. Don't worry. So Edie is saying what gives her hope is the spirit of individual Israelis. So here's, I just want to share just a very quick little story, and then we will continue with Ma'ariv. So in terms of hope, I mean, I traveled, as Rabbi Schweber did a few years ago, with Moshe Pomerati and with a number of our teens, so 45 of our teenagers, to Israel. We saw all different kinds of Jewish communities. We saw Save a Heart Foundation, which is an Israeli organization that is bringing children who are ill and who need heart surgery from all over the world and can't afford it. And our children got to sit and play with them and to see all of that. We spoke with Israeli Arabs up north who are very much part of Israeli society, and they spoke forthrightly about the challenges, but also about what they love about Israeli society. So it gave me hope that I was able to see Israel through the eyes of our teens who were experiencing the diversity, not Disney World Israel, but elements of real Israel. And the very last thing, I was in Israel years ago after Rav Moshe Feinstein died. And it was very hard to get a taxi to the airport because everybody was there for his levaya, for his funeral. So I was sitting in a taxi with 5 other guys, and they were headed back to yeshiva. I was headed to the airport. Anyway, long story short, the cab driver did not stop complaining about this about Israel and that about Israel. And he said, you know, his salary isn't what he wishes it were. He didn't happen to like the prime minister at the time. And he was complaining that he couldn't afford housing, et cetera, et cetera. And just as I was about to leave with my luggage, he said to me, so when are you going to make Aliyah? And I said, what do you mean? You know, I said, you didn't say one nice thing about Israel. He said, forget that. It's the best place in the world. Okay.
And the Chazan's coming in that's also just the best advice for all of us, is to go and visit Israel, to also not look at the polarized groups. Oh, that person's Haredi. Oh, that person is this. Meet them as people.
Yeah.
Meet them as people and connect one-on-one with the people. That is the only way that we can, really create the hope. So Chazan Shamash, please join us. If you have a siddur, if you do not, they're on the cart over there. And in just a moment, we'll be rising on page 28 for the Baruch, the call to prayer for the holiday.
So folks, in case you're wondering why Mariv is so late, so the Torah says you're supposed to count Sheva Shabtot Tumimot, 7 complete weeks. So we've counted 7 weeks from Pesach, and now the holiday of Shavuot is about to begin. Please join us, and following Arvit, we'll have dessert and some singing and further discussion. All yours.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Adonai Baruch,
Baruch Adonai Baruch. Le'olam Vaed.
you may be seated. Baruch Adonai Melech Haolam Asher b'Mimenu.
ומה ביום ובלילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבי.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, אהבת תורה מצוות. כי הם חיינו ורחמנו והם נגע יומם ולילה. אהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen. Page 30.
שמע ישראל. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
ישמר לכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 32. We do look to the crossing of the sea every night and day as a source of hope and inspiration.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים בני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך מאלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך רבה ובניך בוקע לפני משה, זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם. ונאמר כי יפקד אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני כל ישראל.
On this Shavuot holiday, spread your shelter of peace over all of the people of Israel, over Jerusalem, and over the entire world.
ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל והירושלים.
As you're able, we rise on page 34 and recite that second paragraph. Vaydaber Moshe et Moadei Adonai al Bnei Yisrael.
וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל, יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמד דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב באמרו אמן. יש מרבה מברך על המלך המאיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קודשה בריחו לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה בעמה ואמרו אמן.
The Amidah cited privately, pages 41 to 44, acknowledging that Shavuot is Man Matan Toratenu, the season of giving of the Torah.
עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עליך ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל
Page 48.
יתקרב ויתקרב שמי רבה. תרמה תברח רותי ומליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובמכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בקרב זמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה בבקר, למה למעמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרום ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילם מנחה ברכתה ושירתה, תושפעת ורחמתה תמירה, בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יתקבל צלות רבתון דרכו ישראל, הודם עוון וישמעיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב משמעיה וחיים על רווחו ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
51 Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת קרולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשתנו כאויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, בגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל, על הארץ מתחת עינו. כלכתך כל ברך תשבע כל לשון. כי המלכות שלך למאת ימלוך בכבוד, כך כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני כאן.
Mourner's Kaddish, page 52. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei rabah. V'yama divra kirute v'yamich makute. V'chayechon v'yamechon u'v'chayei techo beit Yisrael. V'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarak li'olam lameh amen. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasek. V'yitzhadar v'yitzaleh v'yitzalak. Shemei de Kudusha Rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shiratak. Tush b'chata v'nechamatak. Gamiran v'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlam araba min shamak. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom mimamach. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We can ask Manish Tana Halayla Hazeh. We get to have dessert for our holiday meal. So I invite you, as you're able to rise, the Chazan will recite Kiddush, and then we can enjoy some ice cream and cheesecake.
And if you have a bottle of wine next to you, it's great for a friend to drink with a friend. So feel free to take some wine with me.
Page 50.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hakafeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'roman mikol lashon v'kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון. את יום חג השבועות הזה, זמן מתן תורתנו מקרא קודש, זכר יציאת מצרים, קיבלנו ואתה, ואותנו קידשת מכל העם. מודה קודשך בשמחה וששון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל והזמנים.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו הזמן הזה.
אתה אדוני מלך העולם אשר קידשנו מצווה וציוונו על נטילת ידיים ברשותכם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ.
Amen.
So as Rabbi Schweber said, cheesecake and ice cream for the holiday meal doesn't get better. Enjoy. And then we'll do some singing. So please stick around and sing with us.
Yes, please, please. Someone that has my internet today. So I've got better machine at home, and then you lost. So we have no internet. So then I couldn't use my bigger screen, and then the funeral thing. But good that I also got my Adobe working. Something to this long but still, it's a process. I think you're constant. Good stuff,
Yeah, I do. I do.
There's two songs that we really, we need the best one.
I just know from your why did we put that?
Okay.
Ask him question. I asked him question.
So folks, this is sort of like, it's like the second half of the Passover Seder. Sometimes it's hard to get everybody back together, but we're going to try. So what we'd like to do right now is a little bit of talking, but mostly singing. So just going to ask if we could have people's attention. Because some of this just requires a little bit of introduction. So thanks, everybody. All right. So here's what we're going to do. So there are countless, I mean, not literally countless, but many Israeli songs. And some of them predate 1948. And of course, today in Israel, there are wonderful singers that continue to create new music. So what we're going to do is just like a little taste of some Israeli songs that we think are evocative and interesting. So raise your hand if you heard of the song Yerushalayim Shel Zahab. Yerushalayim Shel Zahab. Okay, wonderful. I think most of us have. So that song so folks, I guess we could do, yeah, if people could just give your attention, because it's going to be hard for us to listen otherwise. So we're going to sing in a moment. Yerushalayim Shel Zahab was written shortly before the Six-Day War by Naomi Shemer. And it's very positive and it's very upbeat, Jerusalem of Gold. And we're just going to spend a moment on this because there was a soldier, an Israeli paratrooper, Meir Ariel, who wrote a song because he was one of the paratroopers that actually helped to restore Yerushalayim, came to the Kotel, prayed at the Kotel. And he says he wrote this after he had a little bit too much to drink. And he called it Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, Jerusalem not of gold, but of iron. And his point in writing this was that the euphoria of 1967 he thought was very beautiful. Everybody was very happy that the Israelis won. Of course, the result would have been a catastrophe. But he said, so what Meir Ariel said was, let's not forget the sacrifice. And let's not forget everything that our brothers had to do in order to defend Israel. So we're going to do a verse of this, and then we're going to do Yerushalayim Shel Zahab. And then we have a few interesting songs about Israel's wars. And so we'll just find our way through. So Chazan Shamash is going to help us. So if you take a look at the very first one, Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, now it's not quite what you're used to. And you see in your darkness, Jerusalem, we found a loving heart when we came to widen your borders. So this is Meir Ariel, one of the Tzanchanim, the paratroopers that liberated Yerushalayim. So we'll start with the chorus. Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, V'shel Oferet, V'shel Shchor, Halo lechol botayich karanu dror. Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, V'shel Oferet, V'shel Shchor, Halo lechol botayich. So we'll just try one of the verses and then we'll do the Naomi Shemer, which is much more familiar.
ובאו אימא אחר אימא בקהל עשה כולו. נושך שפתיו ולא בלי יגע, הוסיף הגדוד ללחום, עד שסוף סוף הוחלף הדגל מעל בית everybody. ירושלים של ברזל ושל חוזר ושל שחור, הלא לכל מותייך קרא. ירושלים של ברזל ושל עופר ושל שחור, הלא לכל מותייך קראנו דורות.
So what you see here, he's saying, we can celebrate, but let's not forget the mothers that buried soldiers. Let's not forget the price that we paid for Yerushalayim. Really very beautiful. I mean, he loved the song Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, but he just did this as a reminder. Let's not forget. And the very end, he says it is of Zahav, but it's also Oferet v'Chalom. It's gold, it's lead, it's heaven, it's earth, and may there always be peace between your walls. So now let's turn our attention to Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. So it was written before the 6-day war. And of course, it says we cannot get to Yericho. No one can go there. And then she wrote a verse after the 6-day war and says, now we can return to the cisterns, to the market, etc. And now we can go down to the Dead Sea by way of Yericho because the Israelis now had access. So we'll do the whole Kol Hashir.
Okay.
And this became, an anthem of Yerushalayim. So everybody turn the page to Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold. And you have it in Hebrew, you have it in English, you have it, the Hebrew written in English transliteration. So let's sing this together, please.
ובתרדמתי לנו הערב, שרויה בשר. ישבת ויושב ובליבה. ירושלים של זהב, ושל חושך ושל אור, עלו לכל וחייב איש של זהב ושל חושך ושל אור.
How the cisterns have dried up.
ואין פוקדת אהבה בעיר העתיקה ובמרות שבסלע ויעללות רוחות ישוב לים המלח בדרך יריחו ירושלים של זהב ושל חושך ושל אור, יעלו לכל זעירי אני הנה. ירושלים של זהב ושל חושך ושל אור, יעלו לכל זעירי אני הנה. בבואי היום לשירה ולקשור את הערים, קטונתי מצעיר בניי ומהחלום הראשונים. איש מחצורב את השפתיים, כי נשיקה רעה. אם אשכח את ירושלים, אשר כמעט כולה זהב. ירושלים של זהב, ושל נחושת
ירושלים
של זהב, ושל נחושת
So now we have returned and we can get to Yericho once again.
אשר בסלע, אלפי שמשות גורפות, נשוב נרד אל ים בדרך יריחו, ירושלים ושל נחושת ושל אור, יעלו לכל שירי ירושלים של זהב, ושל נחושת ושל אור, שירי
Beautiful. So now we have two songs that have a similar theme. One, Hamilchama Achrona, which was performed during the Yom Kippur War. And the chorus is, I promise you, my little girl, that this will be the last war. It's the brave soldier telling, that's fine. It's the brave soldier that's telling his daughter, I promise you this will be the last war. So it's for the sake of the soldiers, the tank corps, the sailors, etc. And we're just going to do the chorus, which is in the middle, Ani Mavtiach Lach.
אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה המלחמה האחרונה. אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה המלחמה האחרונה.
So that gives you a flavor. And on the basis of that promise, there was a very beautiful song that was written in 1994. So the idea was that the children who were promised, that 1973, no more war, etc., we're still here, we're still war. So they said to the parents, really, you broke your promise, but we're not blaming you. We're not going to yell at you. We're just going to gently say that you promised a dove, you promised alezait, an olive tree leaf. Hivtachtem shalom, you promised peace. So very beautiful.
A few lines.
So we're gonna hear a few lines. It's the melody is complicated, but we have some beautiful singers here.
Sure.
So they're going to
start and I'll join you. Ready?
they're gonna do it up.
אנחנו הילדים של אור, לשירים ושלום. חלמתם אותנו לראשונה עם שחר, בתום הקרבות.
הייתם דברים כפי שהודו למזלם הטוב. הייתם נשים שעירות מודאגות, ורציתם כל כך לאהוב. וכשהריתם אותנו לאהבה, בכל 73, רציתם למלא בגופכם, שחיסרה המלחמה.
We can go to the chorus. הבטחתם יונה,
עלי של זית, הבטחתם שלום, הבית, הבטחתם אביב, הבטחתם לקיים, הבטחתם יונה.
So beautiful. So, I mean, so you get the idea. We're the children. Now we grew up. Now we are in the army. And now we are, we know how to make love and laugh and cry. And we dream about having children. So we're not going to pressure you. Yeah. So now, of course, those who were in the army in 1994, their children are still serving. So sadly, one generation after another still has to serve, but still the promise that God willing, this will be the last war. So now we move on to Ainli Eretz Acheret. And this was actually written a long time ago during the War of Attrition, 1969, I believe. It was written when the author's brother died in war. And, there are many ways to interpret the song, but he's basically saying, look, do I always agree with my country? I don't always agree with my country. But Ainli Eretz Acheret, I have no other country, Gami Matmatibo Eretz, even if it's a flame, and Lo Eshtok, I will not give up, and I will keep reminding my country to open up her eyes, Ainli Eretz Acheret. And now, interestingly, all of the protests that are going on, so this has become the anthem of those who are protesting. I might not like what's happening, but this is my country. I'm not going anywhere. And it's very beautiful. By the way, to anybody who wants to criticize Israel, and there's always something to criticize, try having these kinds of demonstrations in most of Israel's neighboring countries and see what happens. It's really, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact. Exactly. Everybody uses it, but anyway, it's a beautiful song, and Ainli Eretz Acheret. So go ahead, everybody.
ביתי הוא לשתוק כי עצי שינתה את פניה כי כאן לא עבדת להזכיר לה ואשיר כאן באוזניה עד שתבקע את עיניה אלי ארץ אחרת גם אם אדמתי בוערת מילה בעברית חודרת אל אורכה אל נשמתי בגוף כואב ביתי
One more.
כי עצי שינתה את פניה כי כאן לא אבא להזכיר לה ואשיר כאן באוזניה עד שתבקע את עיניה עד שתבקע את עיניה.
Okay, wonderful. So even if she's changed, I'm still going to remind her, I'm still going to be here, Ainli Eretz Acheret. Beautiful. Now, this song, Chazan written in 2000. Okay. So this was following the brutal lynching of two reserve soldiers in Ramallah in 2004, and it's a beautiful song. When the heart is crying, only God hears. Shema Yisrael, Elohai Atah Kol Yachol. You are the one who can do everything. You give me my life. So this outcry to God, following. Yes, by Shmuel Elbaz. Exactly right. Oh, really? Wow. Okay, please.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוהים שומע, הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה, אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע, בתפילה קטנה פותח את הדממה, שמע ישראל נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל.
הלב בוכה בשקט.
וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת.
שמע ישראל, אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד.
חזק
אותי אלוהי, עשה שלא אחד.
עשה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי אור. כשהלב בוכה, הזמן מת מלך. האדם את כל חייו איתו. הוא לא קורא עצור זהור. שמע ישראל.
שמע ישראל.
אתה כה יכול, נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בין הדמעה הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל
אלוהי,
חזק אותי אלוהי, חזק שלא אחד. הכאב גדול ולרוע, עשה שיגמר, כי לא תביקור. עשה שיגמר, כי לא תביקור.
Okay, beautiful. So now we're going to go back about 30 years before that song to a song that was very famous already and became even more famous because, as you will recall, when Yitzhak Rabin was at a demonstration, they were singing the song. He actually had a copy of the words in his pocket, and when he was shot and killed, there was blood that was found on the actual words of the song. So it's very powerful. This originally was a bit of a protest song. It was, praying isn't enough, and demonstrating isn't enough. We also have to really, really strongly advocate for peace. We have to yell it out. So Tnu Shemesh la'alot, let the sun rise, and Lachein rak shiru shir l'shalom. I think we have to start low because it goes very high. Hashem Meshla'alo Raboker Leha'ir Azaka Shebat Tfilah Otanu Lo Taksir Ba-da-ba-ba-da Hashem Kahanero Uber Afanit Ma Lo Ya'iro Lo Yaksiru Lecha Ishota Lo Yashiv Mibor Titakel Kano Yo'ilu Lo Simchat Anitzavon All we can do is sing out for peace. Shir Shalom Tfilah Shir Shalom B'tzeh Gadol L'Hashem Mishlach Hazon Ba'al La'Paki Tabitu Le'achol Anichu La'olchim Su'ena in Betikva Yodeh Shir Shir Velo LaMilchamo Tagidu Yom Yavo Aviu et Hayom Ki lo chalom hu v'kol ha'milchamo ha'ir La'chen rak shiru shel shalom atil chashu tfilah Shiru shel shalom b'tzeh ha'gadola Shiru shel shalom til chashu tfilah Shiru shel shalom b'tzeh ha'gadola Well, מכתב את זה, wait, Yankel wrote the words, and Yair Rosenblum. Yair Rosenblum. So, there are many songs. I just want to bring your attention, we're not going to do his songs. There is a modern Israeli singer by the name of Hanan Ben Ari. His mother is Persian, his father is Afghani, and he brings so many different elements in his music, but he sang a song basically, Al tisakamu oti beVikipedia, like don't try to summarize me, that I'm right wing, I'm left wing, I'm dati, I'm not. He said just everybody should be able lichtov et hasikum shelo. We should all be able to write our own summaries. So very nice song. And then he writes a song about his village, Pardes Chana, and he said, you know, I've spent all my life yelling. I just want to live in Sheket. I want to talk about the price of beer. I want to buy my wife flowers. So it's a really like a nice sort of a modern Israeli, just like I'm tired of ideology. I'm tired of, I just want to live my life. And now we thought that we would turn our attention. And he's Dati, absolutely, yes, very much so. But he's done some things that have, yes, he's on the way. I think 8 is on the way. Anyway, maybe we'll bring him here once. Okay. Anyway, Al Kol Eile is where we are headed right now, folks. Al Kol Eile, Al Hadvash Ve'ala Oketz, and this is Naomi Shemer. And just, Shmor Al Hama'at Sheyesh Li, guard over what little I have, over the light, over the children, the fruit that hasn't ripened, and the fruit that I have picked. And please, I think it's just a beautiful expression of the fullness of life and the fullness of our people, the fullness of Eretz Yisrael. Also, by the way, while we're practicing, and everybody who'd like to help lead is welcome to come up and join us.
Make a big circle.
I just want to say, by the way, I didn't realize this until right now. So this is what we ccall kind of like, Basher Resmat. It's like an interesting coincidence. The theme of this song is about picking fruits, and this is Chag HaBikurim. So it's a wonderful song for Shavuot as well. Our first fruits should be sweet and abundant. Are we ready? Folks, thank you. We'll be selling CDs in the lobbies, so please. I mean, thank you for joining us. You know, we could always find more songs to sing, but we started with anxiety, but we always end with hope. So for our people, for our lands, for our Torah, tomorrow morning, 9:15, we begin, and we're going to be reading Aseret HaDibrot. We'll be standing at Mount Sinai together and ready to listen and to receive Torah and make it part of our lives. Chag Sameach Lechulam.
La 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 la
Such a. Oh, fucking God. Don't she talk to
What's your daddy Nala? La 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 la